Well, it's Wednesday, April 17th, about 5:30, and I'm going to make my goal today to try to see at least one of the bridges, if not all three of the vine bridges. The last two are real hard to reach unless you have your own vehicle. Even with a taxi, they're almost impossible to reach for much and still have anything more than a half an hour of time. Transportation footnote: these walls are just designed to protect the tranquility of the people who live nearby. Not much traffic going the other way, only one car train. That gives you a clue that you're somewhere out in the Tules. Okay, I'm now at Kochi at about 6 o'clock. It only takes 4 minutes to get here from that little town of Inguchi, and I asked the man there when I came through the turnstiles what gate I needed for my trip at 7:03. I'm an hour early, which is good and usual. And then there are fewer surprises and more time to make sure you've got the right situation. These people, when you ask them a question, boy, they jump on it with a graciousness you can't believe and enthusiasm. When I came, I went to the information office, and the lady I spoke to, nice enough young woman, she had been she learned her English in Seattle, but just right on the edge of being helpful and helpful to the extent that she answered my questions. If I didn't ask the right question, she didn't offer some of the obvious, like here's a map of Kochi. But when I went to the travel agency, which is right about where that lady in the blue is right now, I met a young woman in there, and she did all kinds of things, including making phone calls up to a man up in Awa Ikede, north of where I'm going, and all in an attempt to help me find a way to see all three of the bridges, even though there was no way she could and her agency could make any money for that. So as soon as we were done, I immediately came over and bought a nice little package for $5. Who helped me now just rushed over and brought me these brochures, some of which I think I have. I do so much research, I've got most of this knowledge, but that just shows you how proactively gracious they are. It is amazing. Couple that with an extremely efficient, technical society, and it's kind of a revelation for an American to be here. I like to think that America's at the top of the game, but you have to kind of put in parentheses, if not without parentheses, kinda. I'm not yet sure who this is. My guess is that it is a shogun, or at the very least called a daimyo, or a warlord. Although it could be a guy named Manhiro, who was one of the first, if not the first, Japanese to travel to Britain and act as both here and there, as an interpreter and a negotiator, even though a common man, more or less, on behalf of Japan. I was in yesterday, and they have these in most of the major stations, and they're quite good. You pick up a tray and the tweezers. This is common in many countries. Go about, select what you want, and then take it over here and take it. I cannot remember when, or even if, I have ever tasted tomatoes that had such a tomato taste as do these. And they're firm, and they're perfect in color. I'll buy more. Graphics. I think it's probably because it carries a lot of kids back and forth to school. Almost as though here at Tosa-Yamada, you have to change trains. Somewhere I had heard this, probably from the information center or the travel agency. But the information that anyone gives you does not tell you that. It simply says, go from Kochi to Oboki. It doesn't tell you to switch. So I asked, I was afraid, so I asked the conductor guy on the last train. He told me I had to get off, but I couldn't understand his English. But he then took me down to the train station master, where he then looked at my Japan Rail Pass, curiously enough, opened it up and started reading the rules on the inside like that. It was the first time he'd seen a Japan Rail Pass. But anyway, then they determined that I should get on this train, which was right next to where he was, which is good. It's a real good train. And it has a bathroom, and I'm about ready for that. And if I were caught on the local train that doesn't have a toilet, I'd have to get off, and who knows how I'd get back on and what would happen to the rest of the day. In situations like this, you start to get rattled because you no longer are in control of the information and what's going to happen to your day. Not an earth-shattering thing, but it is in that context at that moment. I gather that I put them in a very unusual situation because they're not used to having to deal with an English-speaking foreigner and solving these issues quickly. Dolled up with her high heels, looking pretty Tokyo-ish, through slacks, if you can believe. Now this is the document I got for transportation from the information center, which normally wouldn't even have this stuff because it's in a totally different prefecture. Forget the fact that to at least a foreigner coming to Kochi is the most obvious jumping off point that's a halfway decent sized city for these bridges. So it's obvious to me, anyway, this is where I would come, which is probably why they have it. But anyway, if you look at this, it says I take the local train 703 and arrive at Oboki at 8:39. Doesn't say a thing about having to change trains. So whether or not this will keep me on that 8:39 schedule, I don't know. And if it doesn't, whether or not when I reach Oboki station will I be able to dovetail into that 8:58 time. If I don't, the next time is 12:08 and then 14:08 to bring me back. And I skip down here on the return to see when I can come back. Well, it looks like, so if I miss the 8:58 and I have to take the 12:08, I get there at 12:35. Then to return, I come down here 12:35. So if I want to hit the 13:10, I have exactly, what, 35 minutes to make it? And then I have to wait until 15:10, which is not so bad. That's what it looks like. One real danger is that this will all fall apart once I get to the bridge, and then getting back will be to either Oboki or, even worse, to Kochi will be difficult. Then I have to somehow figure out how to stay overnight and all that kind of blah blah blah. Now this is a fairly high-speed express, so it's possible that it could actually get me there in about 45 or 50 minutes from that time. Above all, the primary rule is you can never trust the guidebook, Lonely Planet, to give you either accurate or complete information, even though it would be very, very simple to indicate that you have to change trains, for example, in this instance. To be honest, you can't trust anything else that you get from anybody else. You have to keep piecing it together. It's constantly changing environment, particularly in your brain, and that's all you can do. Keep people from using mobile phones in public. The sad irony of my predicament is that this is a facsimile of the bridge, and ironically it may be as close as I get to seeing this kind of a bridge, although that's what I'm here for. In fact, that's what I'm in Kochi for. But this will give you an idea of what it is that we hope to see later today, only much longer. These vines that you see here, I'll give you the name of the tree later on when I get out of the rain maybe, were actually growing on a tree, and they let them grow along the banks until they got long enough they could string them across the river and join them together and let them grow together, and that created their bridge. Today, at the site we're trying to get to, they've embedded steel cables in there to protect us. Also, when they built the bridge, they did not have the sides to them that we see here. As a consequence, it was easy enough to negotiate by those who were really familiar with the use of the bridge from childhood, but for those who were trying to attack opposing forces, their soldiers would get on, it would start to swing from side to side, they would get frozen in terror because there were no handles, side rails, and then they would fall in the river, so it was very defensive. If worse came to worse, the defenders simply chopped the vines and the bridge fell into the river. There is where the bus stop should be. Now, according to my information, my earliest next bus should be at 12:08. My strategy is going to be to walk over there to the bus stop. You see a taxi there. I'll dink around for a while and then maybe approach the taxi driver, see what it would cost to have him take me. Cute carving, don't know what it's for. Gentlemen helped me confirm that the next bus is 12:08, and the taxi cab driver would charge me 3,000 yen one way, so 6,000 yen minimum, and who knows if he'd add more for once we got there for having to wait for me to bring me back. It gives me about 2 hours to walk around in the rain, which is fine. I'm equipped for it, I believe. And the worst that'll happen, I hope, is that I'll spend some time there, a very short period of time, and then jump on the bus coming right straight back. I have to look and see what that is. We'll go over and look at the little town. A little station beyond where I'll get the little bus, hopefully. There's my only bridge so far of vines. One of the realities of independent travel is that you're always making lemonade, and you go from moments of considerable anxiety to the very good feeling that comes immediately afterward of relief, and then contentment, if not complacency. Because even when and if your plan falls apart, you come up with another plan. Even if you can't achieve the objective you hope to, you achieve other objectives, like take a hike. Interesting note, that was a very tall bridge. Well, kinda. When I look down from an extreme height like this, particularly off of a bridge, and try to imagine what the people who commit suicide are thinking. What horrors must go on in their mind to make this plummeting down and crashing, crunching into those rocks somehow better than what's going on in the turmoil of their brain. This is pretty because I hadn't seen any tulips so far, I realize. Across the river is a barber. Here's a hair salon, and another one next door. Is this a case of video stores? One makes profit, the other figures I better jump into the game. This seemed like a pretty vertical ecosystem to take a look at. I wonder what's up with the bear. Is that what oboki means? Or Is it a reference to, an allusion to Smokey the Bear, who incidentally has his own zip code because he gets so much mail? Just had a good conversation with this young woman and her boyfriend, mainly with her boyfriend, Oscar. They are from Hong Kong, have traveled and lived in Canada, speak English very, very well. And just for the record, they stayed in a hotel up above here. And bye-bye. Very relatively inexpensive, they said. Often is for two people. And then they walked in 30 minutes to the bridge. And one can only wonder what this is for. It looks like a cross between a South Pacific Island native and his club and some kind of captain. Oh, Shikoku Railroad Company.